Yeah, thanks for the warm welcome. It's really nice to be here. Now, I'd like to spend the next 50 minutes talking about strategy testing. I believe many of you are testers and probably work on test goals and have something like a test strategy, which of course is really important to make sure that we build a product that works as expected and has good quality. But I'd like to discuss techniques and tools that can help you figure out if you should build and test a product in the first place. So techniques and tools that hopefully help you to increase the chances of building a product that users really want. So imagine you've got an idea for a new product or maybe some new features, and if you're anything like me, then you may be super excited and you think this is great, it's an amazing idea, it's a cool idea, it's going to be some awesome features that you want to implement, a really nice product, and of course, amazing technologies, right? So, as it's such a good idea, it's tempting to be pretty confident that surely this is going to sell. This is going to sell like hotcakes. But having a good idea is all nice and good and well. But how do we know that this idea will actually result in this? Right? So a happy user, a happy customer, happy in the sense that the product does a good job, addresses a real problem, provides a tangible benefit, something that people don't want to miss once they've experienced the product, once they've started using the product. So how can we tell? Now, traditionally, and I find that's what many managers, particularly many senior and executive managers, are used to and in a way want. Traditionally, we would do quite a bit of upfront work and create a big plan, right? So you may want to do some market research and analysis and create a financial forecast to figure out, how economically interesting it is to build the product, and then have this big plan, right? And in a way, there's nothing wrong with thinking things through and doing a little bit of prep work. And it's only natural that companies want to spend their money wisely. There's only so much money we have and so many people who can work on new software products. But if it takes too much time to do the upfront work, and if the plan is rigid, and if the attitude is, well, we just have to execute it, and then, this amazing new product will materialize, I think it's probably not quite appropriate. By the time that the plan, was put into practice, the markets may have changed, and, the product may no longer be successful, may no longer be really needed. So the other side of the coin, in a way, is what programmers want, and I guess I generalize here. I used to be a programmer many years ago, and I still get very tempted to think about features and technologies and how I can realize any new product idea I'm working on. But I think as programmers and as technically minded people, we just want to give it a go, right? We just want to hit the keyboard and cut all the red tape and get rid of all the bureaucracy and minimize any upfront planning and just, give it a go. Build a prototype, see if it flies. And again, I think, there are many positive elements in this approach, and per se, there's nothing wrong with it. One of the fundamental challenges that product managers and product owners face is that it's so difficult to forecast, to anticipate how users will respond to new features or new products, unless they actually experience using them. So giving something that resembles the final product at an early stage to users and customers can be a great way to find out if we're on the wrong track or if we're on the right track. But if, it's all about just building it for the sake of it because it's cool, and in a way, if hacking your way to glory is the success strategy, then that's probably something that's not quite ideal, right? So, maybe what could be helpful is a happy medium between those two approaches. So I think what may be helpful is, actually something quite simple. And for me, building a new product, but also building new features starts with being clear on the why we're doing it in the first place. And that, in my mind, has to do with the vision that we have, our overarching goal that we'd like to achieve. Our overarching goal and vision in the sense of, what's our motivation, what's the aspiration behind building the product, what's the positive change that the product should create, right? Now, to make this maybe a little bit more concrete, my vision for being here is to learn from you and share what I know. So that's the vision, that's the overarching goal. And having that vision, I think, is good, right? But it's not good enough. We also need something like a strategy, something like the path towards the vision. How can we realize the vision? How can we attain it? How can we make it happen? So, when I was thinking about how do I get from London to Berlin, I had several options. I could take the train, I could drive, I could fly, I could possibly cycle, maybe even walk, right? And I decided to take the plane. It seemed to be the fastest way to get here, right? So that's in a way the strategy. And I find it interesting because, in an Agile context, and traditionally Agile frameworks, particularly, a model like Scrum, there's a fair amount of emphasis on having a vision, having a shared vision. And that's cool, that's great. But nobody really talks about strategy. And it's sort of, in a way, assume that you already have a valid strategy and you already know, roughly how you approach building this product. And then, of course, vision and strategy alone don't cut it. Building a great product requires attention to detail. And so we do have to worry about the details, the specific steps along the path. So, if you travel to Berlin, you may have, just like me, had to book your flight and drive to the airport and check in and board the plane and all those specific steps to actually get from A to B. And of course, in a software development context, that'd be writing user stories and creating story maps and writing test cases and scripts and executing them. But for me, again, it's very difficult to decide which user stories should be written and which user stories and requirements should be tested if we're not clear on the overarching vision, the overarching goal, and if we're not clear on how we want to get there, who we're building the product for, and why people would want to use it. So as I find vision and strategy really important and helpful in order to create software products, I'd like to spend a little bit of time discussing the two concepts. So vision, I sometimes get asked by people that say to me, well, Roman, all this vision thing, well, all right then, but we really have this amazing idea and we believe in it, right? And it's really cool, we're all excited, we're all psyched. Why do we need this vision thing? Why do we really need this vision? And so, in this situation, I always find it helpful to refer to someone else who's highly regarded, someone like Steve Jobs, who said something smart. And I really do like this quote. So, Steve Jobs said, if you're working on something exciting that you really care about, then you don't have to be pushed. The vision pulls you. And so for me, this nicely summarizes the idea behind using a vision, an overarching, hopefully shared goal. So, that you have something like a true north, something that aligns everyone, something that guides everyone. The benefit of having that vision is that it's easier to agree on a big, fuzzy goal than it is on a specific product idea. And it's less tempting to quickly start to think about features and implementation options or how you could test it, right? So, the other thing I find important with a vision is to differentiate between the vision and the idea clearly. So say that, I want to build a health app that helps people become more aware of their eating habits, like, when they eat and what they eat and how much they eat. Now that might be a nice idea, and I've just listed 3 key features of that little product, but it wouldn't be the vision, right? So the vision, I think, should be more ambitious. The vision should be bigger. It should be about helping people eat healthily, and maybe even helping people lead a healthier lifestyle. So, the kind of change that you'd like to see. Sort of the positive impact that your product should make in the world. And for me, that's important because that's really something that keeps me motivated, particularly when the going gets tough. And I find, whenever I work on a new product, there are phases where I sort of, lose faith in a way, and I think, oh, why am I doing this? This is all so hard, and the thing that in a way keeps me getting up in the morning, apart from, of course, the fact that I need to earn some money. So yes, vision, I find it quite powerful, and if you currently don't have a vision or don't use a vision for your product, then maybe that's something you could try, that you sit down with your colleagues and say, why the hell are we building this product? What's our aspiration? What's our motivation? What's our vision behind it? Could be helpful. Yeah. Good, so that's the vision. Now, let's say we have a vision. That's all good and well, but we're still not any closer to the original question where we started off from, and that is, how can we avoid building a product that doesn't really create any value, right? So how do we make sure that it does benefit people? And for me, there are two elements, or two elements make up the answer. The first one is really purposefully choose your path, purposefully choose the strategy. And secondly, do some testing, do some validation around, so that you're confident that it can work, that the path can be walked. And hopefully, as testers with the second part, that's something where you can contribute a lot. So choose your path, and choosing your path means, in my mind, describing something like the product strategy. And the product strategy really is quite a simple concept. It really just describes or answers a handful of questions. The first two questions are maybe the most important, the most fundamental ones. And those are really about the users and the customers. And they may be quite trivial, but understanding who the beneficiaries are, who should use your product, who should buy your product, I think is really the starting point for being able to reason about, what problem do you want to address, what needs do you want to satisfy, what kind of features should the product have. And I find that often people don't really know much about their users and customers, and don't really go and see them and talk to them, and can't really describe them, or can't really say how old they are. And I find that suboptimal. I find that difficult, if you don't know who your customers really are, then, to build a product that does a truly great job for them. So for me, that's the first step, to think about the market, you could say. And the next step then is to think about, what's in it for the users and the customers. Why the hell would they want to use your product, or would they want to buy your product? Right? What problem does it solve? What benefit, what gain does it deliver to them? Or what pain does it take away? So what's the incentive? What's the incentive for them to interact with the product or buy the product? And why would they choose your product? I mean, usually, people face an abundance of products they can choose from, right? I mean, markets tend to be crowded these days. There are products all around us. So what makes your product special? What makes it stand out? Why should people choose your product? And that's really related to the value that the product creates for the users and customers, or the value proposition of the product. And finally, what's in it for your firm, for your company? What's in it for the business? What are the business goals, or what are the business drivers? Is it about entering a new market segment, opening up a new revenue source, achieving a certain profitability target, reducing costs, developing the brand, or a combination? But I think it's important to know why a company invests in a product, what the desired business benefits are. And again, otherwise, it's kind of difficult to make the right decisions about the product details, right? So yes, that's something that I would encourage you maybe to do. And for those of you who don't work on new products, don't worry. Again, it can be very helpful, I find, to sit down with your colleagues and just try and answer those questions. Right? Maybe answer them separately and write your answers on post-it notes, and then visualize your post-it notes, put them up on the wall, and see what answers people come up with and how much agreement you have. Right? If there's sort of a shared understanding around what problem your product solves or not. Right? Good. So that's the product strategy. I'd like to sort of share a few ideas around how can you make sure that you come up with an initial strategy that's meaningful, that's helpful. And the first one really is around creating or selecting a narrow, focused, ideally clear-cut segment or target group of people. A different way to put this is to say, don't try and build a product that tries to please everyone and then doesn't do a good job for anyone. Focus and start with a small group, and then take it from there. Once you've gained some traction and had some initial success. And so a good product in my mind, a good example for a product that did that very well in my mind is the first generation iPhone. So the iPhone that launched in, I think, 2007. So when you think back about 10 years ago, then most smartphones available, like all the Nokias and the Blackberries, they really addressed the needs of the business users. and really focused on the enterprise segment. What Apple did was, in a way, brave, because they said, well, you know, this is a very lucrative segment, but we don't really care. We're going to position our product differently, and we're going to address a different segment. We're going to focus on the consumers. Right? So they built a consumer device, at least initially. And then when you look at the price of the first iPhone, I think the cheapest model was $500. So it wasn't any old consumer who could afford the first iPhone. And it was a new piece of technology. So, you know, people had to be able to spend $500 on a new piece of technology, and they had to trust the company, you know, that the product would work, right? And so, you know, they probably went for a sub-segment or subgroup within the consumer segment. Those people who trusted Apple, had an affinity with Apple, the brand, and maybe had used Apple products before and, you know, had some spare cash. And then, of course, you know, what Apple did after the initial success is that they incrementally enhanced the iPhone and built on it and added more features and more functionality and, you know, addressed the business users as well. And they've taken it further in recent years with the introduction of the iPhone 5C and now recently with the iPhone 6 Plus, and essentially opened up a product line, right, and created product variants. Yeah. So something maybe to think about, that you try and have focused products, focused in the sense that they address a clear-cut target group. It tends to be beneficial. It allowed Apple to build this product in a comparatively short time frame, I think about 2 years. And when you look at the functionality, then it's fairly slim, it's fairly lean. So, you know, I know, you know, people at Apple, you know, worked super hard to make this phone happen, and it's a very complicated device. But when you look at the actual features, the actual functionality, it's fairly focused. And that's acceptable because, again, you know, the target group was fairly focused and fairly narrow. So yes, maybe something to think about. And then the next piece of advice I'd like to share with you is to go for a product that addresses a real problem, a real issue, and find an itch that's worth scratching, right? So if your product addresses an itch where people say like, well, yeah, it's a little bit itchy, but I can live with it, it doesn't really have a compelling, strong value proposition. And if your product doesn't address a real problem or doesn't provide a tangible benefit, it'll be really difficult to monetize it. It'll be really difficult to find a way to earn money with it. And I think quite a few digital products suffer from that problem, right? And then you say like, well, difficult to monetize, we've got to give it away for free, and then hopefully we'll build a user community, and then in the future we'll be able to somehow earn money with it. But I think that's taking a gamble. You know, I'd say, well, you know, if you're not clear why people want to use the product or why people want to buy the product, you know, don't build it, don't invest in it. You know? So yes, find an itch that's worth scratching, and a product that I like to use and I find provides a good benefit for me is the Sonos system. Do we have any Sonos users, any Sonos owners in the audience? Yes, a few people. So Sonos is a distributed hi-fi system that makes it real easy to listen to music, particularly internet radio or listening to one of the streaming services like Deezer and Spotify. And as you can see, you know, you can basically use any device. I typically use my phone to decide which music I want to listen to. So gone are the days where you have to get up and switch on the amplifier and then search for the right CD and then slot it into the CD player and then find the remote control and then finally hit play, or where you have to take your handheld device and then go walk to the docking station and dock it in. It's just all there, right? You just all do it from your phone or your tablet or your laptop. And it's super convenient, it's super easy to listen to music, and the quality is good, so it's enjoyable. You know, so it creates a very convenient and enjoyable experience for me, and that's the reason why it seems more and more rooms in our house get equipped with Sonos speakers. So yes, for me that's a product that creates some real benefit. Yes, good. The next tip, there are two more to go, so that's the penultimate one, is to encourage you when you build your product, when you design your product, when you think about your product and the product strategy, to figure out what makes your product different, what makes it maybe special or unique, what makes it stand out from the crowd. And again, I'll show you a product that I like to use. It's a little app called Strava, Do we have any Strava users in the audience? Again, a few people use Strava. So Strava is a product that allows you to track your running and your cycling activities. I use it for my cycle rides. And there are quite a few other products out there. The thing that makes Strava special in my mind is that it allows you to compete. Right? And you can see this, I'm not sure if it's clear enough, but on the right-hand side, actually, you can see the performance of the person who recorded the rides compared to someone else. So, you know, when I come home from a ride, the first thing I do is I upload the data, and then I look at what Strava tells me, and I can see if I've beaten any of my old times, you know, the segments or the parts of the rides that I've ridden before. And I can see if I've collected any trophies, if within my age group I've become third, second, or first. Now that may sound silly, but it provides a real incentive for going out there and riding hard. And there are people, I think, who are termed technically Strava monkeys, who just ride to beat other people and, you know, collect #1 trophies. Now, you know, it's debatable if that behavior is desirable or not, but, you know, it clearly makes the product stand out. It clearly makes the product stand out. So, you know, while this is a product that's been around before, Strava, they've managed to basically introduce a killer feature. So, you know, that's maybe something you want to think about, you know, is there any specific feature, or is there maybe a small set of features, 2-3 features that really make your product special? Again, maybe thinking of the iPhone could help. Think back to the initial presentation when Steve Jobs, I believe, said, you know, it works like magic. Yeah, works like magic. You know, the sort of the key features of the initial iPhone that sort of keep coming up in the presentation, like, you know, it's actually a phone, you can make phone calls. You can use it as an iPod. Wow, so it's a phone and an iPod. And mobile internet. I guess that was a biggie. Good. And finally, have clear prioritized business goals. So it goes back to what I said earlier, be clear on why it's a good idea for your business, for your firm, for your company to invest in the product, what your company wants to get out of it. I mean, products really are just means to an end, right? They're just value creation vehicles or mechanisms. So they should create value for the customers and the users, but they also have to create value, of course, for the company. Otherwise, it's difficult to sustain developing the product. And the sample product that I've selected for this little tip is the Toyota Prius, a car that's been around for a little while. I think it originally launched in 96, 97. And when I believe that when Toyota initially started selling the car, the company actually lost money with every single vehicle they shipped. But I think it was still a good idea for them to go ahead and keep offering the Prius. And so one of the benefits that Toyota has gained from selling the car is that they've changed their image. They've developed their brand, right? They could say, well, we're the first company who's developed an eco-friendly family car, right? So eco-friendly family car, therefore, you know, we're a green car company. And, you know, I think, you know, that certainly helped Toyota. Plus, it's given them a massive advantage in hybrid technologies, an advantage that they still benefit from today. Yeah. So I just thought, you know, I'd use this specific product because it doesn't always have to be about making a certain amount of revenue or hitting a profitability target. You know, it can be less tangible, such as developing the brand or, you know, gaining some important knowledge or a knowledge advantage. But, you know, it is still important to understand it, be clear about it, and know those goals. I guess another example would be iTunes, right? If you think about iTunes never sort of earned Apple that much money as far as I know. I mean, they used it initially to sell some digital music, but made poor margins on the music they sold. But what it really helped to do is shift iPods. You know, so iPod sales significantly increased once iTunes was available, particularly on Windows. Right? So that's cool too. Yeah. So if you have a product that doesn't really generate any revenue but helps you sell services, that's perfectly okay. But again, you know, there's a clear then business goal, a clear business benefit that your product provides. Good. So yes, there's one more thing I'd like to say, and that's just maybe you find it helpful to capture all the your ideas around who are the customers, what's the value proposition, what are the business goals by using a helpful tool. And I'd also like to say, in my mind, it's not about tools. There are other tools out there apart from the one that I'm going to show you. But real quick, this is a little template, a little structure that I've developed. It's called the Product Vision Board. It's really simple. It contains, as you can see, 5 sections. At the top, there's just a little bit of space to state your vision, your overarching goal, your motivation. And then the product strategy is underneath it, the 4 columns. And the first one is called Target Group, and it just allows you to state who you believe the users and the customers of your product are. So who are those people? And then the next section talks about the needs, the problem that your product addresses, or the benefit it generates, why people will want to use it. So that's really answering the why question. And to me, answering the who and the why questions, that's really essential. And I think I mentioned that earlier. If you're not able to say who are your customers and your users and why would they want to buy the product, don't write any user stories, don't think about requirements, don't think about story maps, don't think about testing anything. I don't think you're in a position to do so. And then the product column just says, what is it? What kind of product are we talking about? What makes it special? What maybe are the top 3 features? And can we actually build it? Is it feasible? Right? Do we have the skills to develop it in a reasonable time frame, with a reasonable amount of money? And then finally, value talks about why would it be a good idea for your company to invest in it? What's in it for your business? What are the business goals or the business drivers? So if that structure resonates with you, great. You can download the template for free from my website. If not, don't worry about it. It's not about answering a fixed set of questions or filling out a template and ticking boxes. It's really just about making sure that you can confidently answer some fundamental questions about the market and the value proposition and the business goals. So that was a lot on vision and strategy. I don't know how you guys feel about this, but it seems like, wow, it's a lot of stuff that we should sort of, in a way, be aware of and answer. So, surely we must be done now and can hit the keyboard and start coding, right? No? Yes? Maybe? Well, maybe you've come across this gentleman here. So that's from the BBC series Top Gear. And it's the stick. That's the name of the character. And the stick does something that should resonate with you guys. The stick tests, right? I have to say the stick tests flashy, very fast and expensive cars. And what I'm about to suggest now is maybe not quite as exciting. And usually it doesn't involve fast cars, but it does involve some testing. So the idea now, and this is very much in the spirit of lean startup, is that I'd like to discuss with you, that I'd like to share with you, is that you use your initial strategy and then test it, validate it, develop it, correct it, improve it, enhance it. Because if you basically follow what I've suggested so far, then your initial strategy is based on a bunch of assumptions and ideas on what you know right now. Now, some of those ideas and some of those pieces of information may be valid, they may be correct, they may be spot on. You may have nailed certain aspects of your strategy, but others may be wrong, right? And so the idea is now that you take a good look at your strategy and say, are there any risks? Are there any areas of uncertainty that we're uncomfortable with, where, if we don't address that risk, if we don't address this area of uncertainty, then, we might be making the wrong decisions, and we might be taking the product in the wrong directions, and we might experience late failure, right? And late failure is always painful. So yes, select the biggest risk, and the biggest risk could be around, have we selected the right target users and customers? Maybe we should address younger people, maybe we should address older people, maybe we should address, go for women first, or no, let's focus on the blokes first. Or maybe it's around the problem that the product addresses, or it's around the feasibility, or it's around monetization and the business goals. So identify the biggest risk, and based on the biggest risk, decide how you should address it. So if it is around the target group, then you may want to go and talk to users and customers and carry out some problem interviews, or you may want to observe how they work today, what they struggle with, what their current experience is of using the product that you provide to them today, or the products that they use today, and collect some data. Collect feedback, collect some evidence. Right? And then use this empirical evidence, use the data to do some reflection and some analysis, and decide how to take it from here. How to take it from here. And for me, the beauty of working in this way is that we minimize the upfront amount of time and effort we spend with market research and analysis. We do it in a way just in time, just enough research and validation work. And it is, the decisions that we're taking are, in this context, not purely based on intuition and gut feeling, or whoever shouts the loudest and is the most powerful stakeholder. They're hopefully based on the empirical evidence, the data that we've collected, that we've generated, and that we've analyzed. Or to put it differently, right? If you're a big boss, if one of the powerful stakeholders comes to you and says, yeah, but we should do it this way, at least if you have some evidence, if you have some data, if you've talked to people, or if you've built a spike, or if you've shown people an MVP and you've got their feedback, you've got some empirical evidence, you can stand up to them and say, like, what a wonderful idea. It's really amazing. Unfortunately, the data that we have suggests something different, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean that, the powerful stakeholder will then back down, but at least, it hopefully, gives rise to a rational decision. So, yes, test your strategy, adopt a risk-driven approach. Now, the issue, of course, with a risk-driven approach is that if you tackle the biggest risk first, then you may find out that some of your ideas or assumptions aren't appropriate, right? And so this means that in this process, failure, and particularly early and fast failure, is part of the game. And, I personally feel that failure isn't necessarily desirable or nice. I don't enjoy failing for a number of reasons. And you can see this poor guy here riding his bike at the London Olympics. He's experiencing a form of failure. And it doesn't look like it's going to be a pleasant one. But I mean, it's true, right? I don't know about you, but certainly, when I sort of, think back watching my kids learn to ride, the kids fall off and sometimes they hurt themselves a little bit. I've come off my bike numerous times. Even now when I ride hard, I sometimes crash, right? It is part of the game, and it's in a way a risk that we have to take when we build new products and new features. So for me, the trick is, as I said, to fail early and in a way appreciate failing and changing the strategy, making changes to it as something that gives us options, something that allows us to build the best possible product and not a product that we dreamt up originally, but maybe is built on wrong or invalid assumptions. But being able to fail and being able to leverage failure requires the creation of a failure tolerant, if not fail-safe environment. And so, failing fast and failing early is easier said than done. I've never had a boss who said to me, Roman, I want you to fail a little bit more. Right? You should fail, mate. Or, well done for failing again and making this mistake. Well, I'm proud of you. Surely you deserve a pay increase. So I don't know about you, maybe you have these kind of bosses and you're really lucky. I mean, I used to have bosses that said, like, yeah, Roman, interesting idea, but really just go and do your work. And so I think, there's, in a way, the corporate culture and, the way big companies work and what they've optimized themselves for, that makes failure difficult, right? I mean, many big companies are really good at managing mature assets and building and executing plans, right? And in that environment, making a mistake is maybe not desirable and it's not necessarily tolerated. But if we do something new, then we have to make mistakes in order to learn. Wasn't it Einstein who said the person who's never made a mistake has never tried anything new? And I think it's true, right? And then I think on a personal level, it's also not easy, certainly for me, to fail, because I get really excited and psyched when I work on a new product. And because I get psyched about it, I get attached to my ideas. And because I get attached to my ideas, I start identifying myself with, this new product. And then if I experience failure, it's suddenly not only the idea that has failed, it feels like I have failed, right? And so, so for me, failing often is difficult because of the organizational context, but also because I get too psyched, too attached to my ideas. So creating a failure-tolerant environment is something that climbers do, and that sort of brings me on to my second favorite pastime activity. So this is a picture of a very beautiful landscape. I find this a beautiful landscape. It's the buttermilks in California in the US. And you can see that there are sort of these big granite boulders, these big rocks lying around. And if you look closely, you can probably see a bloke climbing up this piece of rock. And so he's climbing without a harness and a rope, and there's nobody belaying him. And that form of climbing is called bouldering. Do we have anybody here who is a boulderer? I've got a few people here. Oh, hello. Yeah. Good. So the trouble, of course, is when you climb without a rope is when you fall down, well, you hit the ground. So what boulderers tend to do is they don't tend to climb too high, but even if you climb 3, 4, 5 meters high and you fall down, you can hurt yourself quite badly. So, boulderers have developed a very simple but effective technique. They use this little thing here, which is called a crash pad, and they carry it around. So, I take it to the rocks and I look at the boulder and I see like, wow, where could I fall off and which spot would I hit? And this is where I place the boulder mat. So if I come off, the chances that I sustain a bad injury, are reduced. And hopefully, it's going to be not too bad. So what this does is it turns a potentially threatening and hostile environment into something that is okay, that can be handled. And I think we need something similar for our companies, the companies that we work in. We need to think about how can we create a fail-safe or failure-tolerant environment. And there are a number of techniques that we can use. I think Lisa this morning in her keynote mentioned hack weeks. Get together and give people a day, maybe several days or a week to come up with new ideas, explore ideas, and maybe build some early prototypes or MVPs, maybe do some testing with users and customers. Or something I've had very positive experiences with is to use an incubator. And that really means pulling people out of their day-to-day environments, renting a new office, maybe even at a new site, at a new location, and co-locating everyone, at least initially, so to give people the opportunity to literally think outside the box and get away from all the traditions and all the norms and all the standards and the sort of traditional ways of doing things. And having an environment where it's okay to fail, where it's okay to make a mistake because the boss doesn't sit next to you and doesn't notice, or there isn't any peer pressure and you don't want to look bad and you don't want to feel awkward failing in front of your colleagues. So incubator, a temporary business unit, a new office where you bring people together to create new products can be very helpful. Or a lab model like I believe LinkedIn uses it, where people rotate into a lab environment and then after a few weeks or a few months rotate out again. And while they're spending time in the lab again, they have the opportunity to explore new ideas and see how they could implement those ideas so they create some value for the users and for the customers. So that brings me to the summary of this little talk. The first thing I'd like to say to finish off is really work on products that you find exciting and meaningful if you get a choice. Or try and choose those products, and grab that choice. I think it's frustrating to work on products that you don't really consider as beneficial. I find it really hard. I find that I can't really do a good job, and when the going gets tough, I find it really hard to motivate myself. And secondly, it's not about building cool features. It's about delivering a product that really creates value for people. If your product doesn't provide some real value for its users and customers, it will be difficult to monetize it. It will be difficult to make it a commercial success in one way or the other. And secondly, I find that life is too short to work on products that nobody really wants and needs. So let's try not to do it. So that's it. Thank you very much for your attention. I think we still have some time left for questions. So I very much look forward to your questions. If the little tool that I showed you resonated with you, you can download it from our website and find much more information there. And of course, you can also reach out to me via email, Twitter, Facebook, Google+, and whichever channel you prefer. So thank you.